book Linchpin, let me quote, you say the linchpin is an individual who can walk into chaos and create order, someone who can invent, connect, create, and make things happen. Every worthwhile institution has indispensable people who make differences like these. What advice do you have for any students or young entrepreneurs who may be here today about how does one become indispensable, if not literally, practically?
As an entrepreneur, when you learn to make a sales call and take a no as no for now and get ready for the next one, or take a yes and then have to go build what you promised, now you are confronting that thing that scares you. But if you are just planning, you're hiding. So the steps to being a linchpin are being able to become the person, because I don't think anyone is born this person, to become the person who raises their hand first and volunteers to help first and says, I will start this thing.
I want to ask you the definition of leadership.
Leadership is all about human interaction. Leadership is the ability to put a group of human beings into an environment where they want to do what you need done. And they believe in you, they trust you, you trust them, you believe in them.
Characteristics of a good leader?
Empathy, a sense of purpose, you know where you want to take people, and the willingness to fight for your followers, and to recognize them, and to discipline an organization, to give an organization high standards, and at the same time, to discipline it in the sense that when people are not getting it done for you, move them on, get them somewhere else, move them somewhere else.
Your whole life has been about teamwork. How does one create meaningful, purposeful teamwork in a corporation, organization, university, community?
First, you have to understand the strengths and weaknesses of individual human beings. They're not cookie cutter. And so what I've always tried to do as a commander or as Secretary of State or National Security Advisor, what is this fellow's strength? What is her weakness? And I try to compensate across the line. Take advantage of his strength. Does he have any deficiencies I have to deal with? She's a little weak here, I've got to mentor her. I've got to mentor him, he's a little weak. And you have to constantly work with human beings.
If you're irrelevant and you're not innovative, the world moves around you so fast, you suffer.
Correct. And it's constant. It's constant change, and you must constantly reinvent, and you have to figure out what the customer wants before they know they want it. And if you do that, you'll be successful. Change is hard. I mean, I'd like to wave the flag and say we're great and we're better than anybody else, and maybe we are for a blink of an eye, but the rest of the world is moving forward, and we must figure out how we're going to compete, how we're going to meet them, how we're going to beat them, and how we are going to offer our customer the best value.
So what does it mean to be a leader? I mean, in your mind, what are some of the characteristics, some of the traits that you would say an effective leader in this environment is someone who possesses these behavioral patterns? What are those?
You have to have curiosity. And curiosity is something that I am very, very passionate about. I believe in.
What does it mean to be curious?
Well, curious means that you study, you always look, and you understand what's happening on the external environment. That can be what customers' wants and needs are. It can be what's happening throughout the globe. You've got to be curious to understand things. And I talk a lot about curiosity, but really curiosity is important, meaning that you read, you study, you understand, but it's also got to be actionable. It's got to be something that can move the organization forward or move yourself forward or your team forward. And that's another key characteristic of leadership.
That's the difference, isn't it, though? Is that you're going to be actionable, because you can be curious, you can spend half your life just uncovering and discovering, but if you don't do something with it, then nothing happens. And that something with it has to be congruent to the goals and the values, the vision and the mission of the company.
Exactly.
Somewhere you wrote these words, you said, success isn't about wealth or even preparation. It's about having the right attitude. It's about taking appropriate risks. And it's about perseverance.
The path to success is not a well-trodden path. In fact, there is no path. You have to be willing to take those 3 or 4 steps when you cannot see where the 5th step goes. And that's a risk-taking attitude, which is very, very hard. And it gets appreciably harder as we get older and more comfortable.
Apparently this is one of your mantras that you fought for. Every customer you get, you're never going to lose them.
Every single order that goes out is our one chance to influence that customer. And if we blow it, we've lost him forever. Everyone's an individual. Everyone responds differently. And that drove our personalization, it drove our customer service, and to some degree drove our success.
If this place were full of college students, and you wanted to give them one piece of advice that they would savor and that they could apply in their life for maximum advantage, given your years of experience on the campus of Stanford University and your years of experience traveling across the world and meeting all kinds of people with all kinds of backgrounds, what would that piece of advice be?
Don't seek your comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone. Do something that's really hard for you. Be around people who think differently. Because you actually don't get to know yourself by going deeper into your comfort zone. You get to know yourself by being outside of what you're comfortable doing.
When you speak about mentoring, you speak about it frankly, and you speak about it powerfully. And on pages 46 and 47 of your book titled Extraordinary Ordinary People, you say this, and I'd like to invite you to comment on it if you will, please. You said the schools were too completely segregated in Birmingham. There were no white teachers, no white students. Education in Alabama was well behind the rest of the country. And I'm skipping a bit. Teachers had high expectations and were pretty tough on low performers. To succeed, they routinely reminded us, you will have to be twice as good. This was declared as a matter of fact, not a point for debate. We love you, and we will give you everything we can to help you succeed, they would say, but there are no excuses, and there is no place for victims.
That's what I mean by the belief that you might not be able to control your circumstances, but you could control your response to your circumstances. I tell my students now that it's not a bad mantra to say, I'm going to have to be twice as good, whatever color you are, whatever gender you are, because then you will work twice as hard. And you'll be confident, and you'll be certain of your abilities, and you'll be able to deliver.
I think you have to learn to act on imperfect information. So when we go to law school, we learn that the most important thing is to have all the facts. And then when we get into life, we learn that we never have all the facts. So we have to learn to make decisions without having all the facts.
What does that then demand of the leader to perform and execute in a purposeful way?
You have to have a point of view. And you have to, yes, have courage to state your position and believe in it. You have to have enough followership so that when you make a decision, the people who disagree with it are not going to walk out of the room and start undercutting it. And you have to realize that you're going to make mistakes and you're going to have failures. And as I was recounting to some of the students earlier, if you don't make mistakes and if you don't have failures, then you're not trying anything hard. You're not doing anything important, because anybody can have 100% success at doing things that are easy.
You said living through the Great Depression formed other lasting values. This is you're speaking of your parents, of course. You spoke about uncompromising work ethic, thrift, compassion, perhaps most importantly, perspective. How so?
Well, the perspective was that you got what you earned. It wasn't anything that you could talk your way into. The worst thing that could be said about you in the small working class towns was, he's just a blowhard. You know, if somebody said that, that was the worst kind of insult that you could have. And what helped me most of all was living in working class towns, because you couldn't talk your way into some kind of sense of accomplishment. These were can-do, hands-on families. I don't think my father ever went to the store to buy anything that he could make. And I've always thought that's the beginning, really, of how you get through life, is that if you can make something, you should do it.
I think leadership is influence, but for example, if I have to lead in the area of technology, I wouldn't be the leader. It's not an area that I'm any good at. I have no skills in that area, have very little knowledge. And that's why I say great leaders, they lead in their strengths, but they don't lead in their weaknesses. And they follow in their weaknesses, and they lead in their strengths. And what that means is that there are days when I lead, and there are days when I follow. In fact, I'm not sure I would follow a leader that isn't following somebody. I'm not sure that I want to follow a leader who believes that he or she has all the answers and always knows the path. Because I think we could do a tremendous disservice to people when we try to, fake it till we make it.
You said one thing I began to realize in my travels was that everyone I met who was truly successful, whether in business, in philanthropic work, in human rights, in government, or in raising a family, shared one common trait. They were fanatically passionate about the work they did. They breathed it. They needed it. It was their lifeblood.
Yes.
I agree with you so much about that.
Yes.
Here's my question. Where does one find that passion? How does one maintain that passion? How does one get other people to feel that passion?
You're always going to have people with ideas and thoughts, most of which are from people who love you deeply and are just trying to give you the best advice that they see fit. But if you are not thinking seriously about what is it that breaks your heart, that you're willing to give everything for, then you'll never be able to find that answer. I mean, think about it. Think about all the successful people in that we all know. The thing they all have in common is not their gender or their race or where they're from or their family background. It's the fact that they all know that this is why I'm here.
What was the best advice you received about becoming an effective leader?
Well, I think I'd want to share, Dr. Qubein, my mother's pearls of wisdom, because I believe everybody has a foundation that we build our lives on, and mine are still those very early words that my mother shared with me, but not only words, but action. So my mother's pearls of wisdom are: time is precious, use it wisely. Mediocrity is the greatest sin. Work is the greatest privilege. Failure is a comma, never a period. And can't is a word that does not exist.
So authenticity, teamwork, tenacity, commitment, belief in yourself, and all of that. What are some other traits that if a student were writing here in this house today some notes, what would be another one or two traits that you believe are prerequisites for sustainable, effective leadership?
To be sure that as a leader that you invest in the growth of your team. And that's really, in a difficult economic environment like we're in today, that's a real challenge because most CEOs, when they get ready to cut costs, that's one of the first line items they go to. They go to marketing, they go to leadership and training, which is absolutely backward. I mean, because you're never going to be effective in satisfying your clients' needs if you don't have really good associates. You're never going to have good associates if you don't have good training and development. So always be willing to invest your first dollar in growing your people. More advanced managers realize that if you're going to change the results, you have to change the behaviors, so good training, good education, etc. But very few get the genius of leadership, which is that if you're going to have sustained behavioral efforts over a long period of time, you have to change the beliefs. Because people behave in a manner that is consistent with their beliefs.
You must prepare yourself for a very ever-changing, very competitive marketplace, and it's no longer just in the US. It is a global marketplace. So how do you develop yourself in terms of communication skills, in terms of relational capital with people, in terms of critical thinking, problem solving, solution finding? These are the things that really we have to ensure that the future generation of entrepreneurs and others, yes, whatever avenue they choose to follow, understand viscerally and apply pragmatically on a daily basis.
Well, you are a leader and you are a president and you have to oversee a lot of different disciplines. So we want to bring our kids up to realize that the real important leaders have to cross a lot of disciplines. You know, the communications maybe, the engineering, the writing skills, the understanding things that normal people understand about world events and politics and everything. That's all an important part of life, but very few people, most people are going to be organized into one specific category. A few specific categories. Nobody's going to be completely broad across the whole spectrum. You can't expect that you're only a good person if you learn everything. So one of the things is to understand that you need to collaborate. Find the people where you have weaknesses and you can make something better than you can by yourself.
In Blink, you cite priming, and you say priming happens when subtle triggers influence our behavior without our awareness of such changes.
You were talking about priming 5 minutes ago.
No question about it.
Yeah.
This is why at Hypo University we use words like extraordinary, caring, inspiring, generosity. This is why this place is pristine. This is why there's no graffiti on the walls. This is why we prime in this institution our students to do that. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, this is, I mean, there are so many, I was talking about it earlier when we were talking about Steve Jobs in the factory. Why is the factory white? When you said that's about creating a culture. Yes, exactly. And he's creating a culture by means of priming. He is planting the idea in the environment that we care about order and cleanliness and a meticulous attention to detail, and most of all, and by extension, we care about you, right? That's the real message of painting everything white. He's saying, I even care about the paint, so think how much I care about you as one of my functioning employees, right? That's the message.
That's what parents tell us every day.
Yeah.
They say a school that cares about that must also care about the safety and security of our students.
Exactly.
Must also care about the academic excellence of our students and so on. You've said some very important things, Biz, and you come across as, a casual, fun guy, but clearly you're an intelligent person who has focused on some very important things. You said to succeed spectacularly, one must be willing to fail spectacularly. You say you can't do anything alone, you must assemble the team. Opportunity is manufactured. That's a beautiful statement. Opportunity is manufactured. In other words, it doesn't necessarily come to you, you got to go to it, you got to find it, you're going to make it.
When I went to high school, I thought, okay, it seems like being on a sports team is a good way to integrate well into the school. I never did Little League or Pee Wee football or any. All the other kids were learning all the sports when they were younger, and so I got to high school and I didn't. When I went to these tryouts, I was just like completely frozen up. I was thinking, if I could start a lacrosse team and nobody knew how to play lacrosse, then we'd equally be clueless. So I found a coach out of Babson who played lacrosse. I became the captain of the team for the whole time I was there. So I got what I wanted. I was on a sports team. That's what made me realize that opportunity can be manufactured, because I created the circumstances to take the opportunity. So I was first in line to take the opportunity. Anything like that story, you can take it, you can transpose it into any field.
We've been dreaming throughout all of history of living a long life. Our great-great-grandparents, 50 or 60 years was considered a long life. We're going to be the first humans in history to have this extraordinary experience of a 60 or 80 or even 100-year life. And by the way, some of our children are going to live to be 150 with the kind of breakthroughs that are around the corner.
Two of the most important words in the English language are the words influence and impact. To influence other people in all the gatherings where you are, to impact society and the world, make it a better place. Is the system, and I use that word universally, is the system able to withstand such longevity?
Albert Schweitzer was in his 30s or 40s before he decided to become a physician. Gandhi was kind of a middling politician before he found himself in his later years. History is filled with examples of people kind of coming into their stride at 50 or 60 or even later. And so I think people first have to believe it's possible.